Hello and welcome to another edition, another episode of Veterans to Success, the podcast where we get to talk to, and I get the privilege to talk to seemingly ordinary people with extraordinary stories. And you know what? Guess what? This is the 52nd podcast. A whole year we've been going, which is absolutely amazing. And you know, the fabulous guests I've had the privilege to interview during this first year has been nothing short of spectacular. I'm really, really chuffed to be able to have brought you episodes of heroism, extraordinary stories, and absolutely breathtaking experiences of my guests. And the fact that they've been able to share that and felt comfortable about it really humbles me, because it makes doing what I do so much more important. Because, you know, when you're listening to this, if you get one thing that you can take away to help you get even better results, and my mission, as you know, is to help 1 million veterans and business owner entrepreneurs achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. And you know, if by listening to the podcast, it goes some way to help you do that, it's fantastic. And you know what? What's even more humbling for me and special is the podcast guests. When I've had them on, only a short time later, they said the feedback that they've received from the people that they know that have listened to the podcast and found out things that the friends didn't even know about them. And, you know, people have listened to the podcast from LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. People have actually publicized it on there. Guests have actually shared their views with their massive networks, and people are really starting to gain momentum and getting loads of information and lots of good benefits. And guess what? The feedback from my friends is amazing as well, because, you know, I was only chatting to someone, in fact, Chalky, I'll be chatting, he'll be on the podcast soon. And he was only saying to me at the weekend that he knows me much better now than he ever did before. And, you know, we've known each other for 10, 15 years. So isn't it interesting that as it's conversational and it comes out, you can find out lots and lots about people that you may not have known before. And as I move forward into the next year of interviewing even more successful veterans who've transitioned from the military, or even guys who are still in and are looking at what they're going to do in Civvy Street, well, then I know we're going to have even more amazing stories. So if that's you and you fancy you would like to be a guest on my podcast, just drop me a line on LinkedIn, and yeah, we can have a chat and see how we can work together. And what I'm going to do today, because it's a bit special, and I'm really proud to have seen through a year of podcasting, because guess what, guys? It's not easy, right? And I suppose if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And getting guests involved, and it's becoming easier and easier. The first podcast took a long time to get the right guest, and now people are approaching me to come on the podcast because they want to share their news, experience, views, and wisdom and skills to help others gain the success they deserve. So I'm going to interview myself. I know that seems a bit strange, doesn't it? But I'm going to interview myself and go through the questions in pretty much the same order. And as you know, it's conversational. I may not always ask the question outright, but I know and in case you didn't know this, I know the format, right? And at times it might not sound or seem that I know the format, but guess what? I do. So by the end of this session today, it's only going to take about 5 hours. Only joking, it won't take 5 hours. you'll get a little bit more of an understanding of what makes me tick, whether that's good or bad. So even though you can't detect it from my accent, I'm proud of my Scottish origin because I was born in Glasgow way back some years ago now. And yeah, I was born in Glasgow and I'm proud of that heritage. And my talking about heritage, I'm actually Irish descent as well, which means that I live in England. So, and I've got a Welsh auntie. So really, you could say that I represent Great Britain, although you might say I don't either. But what I'd like to do as well is I'd like to take you back to 1988, right? And this was an unusual time for me because at the time the gates were closing behind me, big wrought iron gates. And I'm feeling a little bit nervous. You see, this was the first day of the rest of my life, and this was the day that I left the military in September. And the gates that closed behind me weren't prison gates. They were actually the gates of 244 Field Squadron. And if you're watching this on video, on YouTube, or my channel, then you will see that I've got the 244 Squadron tie on, which I'm very proud of. And the gates closed behind me, and I'm thinking, wow, what does the future hold for me now? And what I did, I took the time to just review my military career. And I look back where I'd been a class 1 combat engineer. I'd been promoted. I was class 1 plumber and pipe fitter. Yes, what's a plumber and pipe fitter doing in the military? Well, because we're Royal Engineers, we get trained as an artisan trade, and I chose to be a plumber. I was also physical training instructor, class 1, windsurfing instructor, unarmed combat instructor, many things that I did in the military. And if you cut me in half, you would see army through and through, because you can take the man out of the army, you can't take the army out of the man. Oh, that's what I believe anyway. And I was pretty chuffed that I'd done this, because if we go back to some years earlier, because I was about 27 then, if we go back to when I was 14, and I remember my mum was saying to me, and I was an altar boy at the time, because my mum wanted me to be a priest, and I didn't think that that was happening. But I did meet her halfway and become an altar boy. And she said to me, Joseph, and she was 5 foot nothing, my mum, so powerful though, and used to boss my dad around as well. And she said, Joseph, you're going to Lourdes to help the sick. And Lourdes is a place in France by the Pyrenees where it's a place where the Mary was said to have appeared to Bernadette, who was a young girl who was a shepherd. And so it's a place where people go to get healed of sickness or illness. So I said to my mum, I was 14. Well, I was 13 at the time, actually. I said, Mum, what do I want to go to Lourdes for? You know, I want to be playing with my friends. It's the summer holidays after all. I'll be playing football, tennis, bowling, whatever, playing in the park. And she said, Joseph, you're going to learn that not everyone is as healthy as you. And I thought, oh, okay, that's a fair one. And I wasn't going to argue with my mum or my dad, actually, because he agreed. So we tipped up at Liverpool Cathedral, the Catholic Cathedral, and there seemed like hundreds of kids running around. And we actually found the coach I was going on, so I jumped on, and there were about 46 kids with 13, 14-year-olds, and it's the day after my 14th birthday, right? And our chaperones was 1 priest, 2 nuns, and 3 nurses. And back in those days, this was 1974. Health and safety weren't connected words. They weren't associated in any way. It was health, safety, not health and safety. So you can imagine that a priest, 2 nuns, and 3 nurses didn't really know how to control kids all that well. So we set off from Liverpool down to Dover, across the Channel, and just outside Paris, we're driving, everything was okay. And we stopped, the coach stopped, and the priest said, right, okay, kids, off you get, comfort break. So I go bounding down the coach. You know, I'm 14, I'm full of beans, I've been stuck in this coach at the back for hours and hours, seems like days. And I just want to get out and explore. So as I run down, I jump off, and then I don't remember anything. And what seemed like 5 minutes later actually turned out to be 10 days later, because I'd been in a coma. And as I open my eyes, I see white and smell this pungent antiseptic smell. And there's a big black chap standing over me. And excuse the lack of French accent, because I don't do that well. He said, Joseph, he said, you've been involved in a road traffic incident. You were hit by a car. You've broken both your legs, tibia and fibia, in your right leg and left leg. And in your right leg, you've also broken your femur. That's the big bone at the top of your leg. He said, you paralyzed your arm, you've died 3 times, and you were given resuscitation and kiss of life on the side of the roadside. And you've been in a coma for 10 days. Oh, and you're blind in your left eye. Now, this is a lot to take in, right? A lot to take in at this point. And maybe I got the kiss of life and it was off one of these nurses, and maybe in a different time zone, we may still be together, but this time it was to prolong and resuscitate me, prolong my life. And I'm thinking, what's going to happen? And when my mum flew across from the UK with my uncle, and my father joined her later because he'd been working away in Scotland, when she saw me, she had a bad heart, so she ended up in the bed next to me. So that was 2 for the price of 1. And after a short time, the insurance company wrote to us and said, look, you got to get your son back, the money's running out. And my family were absolutely devastated. And, you know, it was touch and go for quite a while. Anyway, the doctors are thinking, right, well, is he going to walk again, isn't he? And I wasn't up for that. All I knew was that I wanted to join the military. So 4 years later, I devoted myself totally to training, getting my arm working again by playing the violin. I started off walking with plasters on both my legs, and then I was using crutches. So I had like a third leg, so I could really shift when I was walking to school. Then the plasters came off, and I got to share with you, right? I got bullied because people thought I was different because, oh, look at him. And there was a nasty term used for people who couldn't walk properly. And I used to get bullied and picked on. And I just thought, I'll show you. Don't you tell me that I can't walk or I'm not going to do something. I'll show you. And, you know, with that in mind, I just got better and better. And then I could start walking normally with no plasters on. Then I could start running. Oh, well, it wasn't running to start with. It was a slow jog and run. And then it's got to running and faster until when I was 16, my dad didn't want me to join the army, so they wouldn't sign the papers. So then I had to get a job and wait. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And as soon as I got to the age of 18, straight down to the Army Career Centre in Liverpool and joined up. And when I went through the medical interview, I thought, oh, they're asking me all these questions, and, you know, I don't know whether I'm going to pass when I tell them what injuries I've had. And being in a coma, and I had a tracheostomy as well, which, because I couldn't breathe, so they had to pierce just below my Adam's apple, so the air could get in. And I thought, it's not looking good. Went down to just outside Birmingham, Sutton Coldfields, to do the fitness test and the written exams. And guess what? I passed. I was in. And then fast forward, training was really tough, right? Back in 1981. It's still tough now. Back in 1981, it was tough. And I remember all of that stuff. So now I'm back at the gates, 1988. And I'm thinking about the successful career I had in the military, which I've already shared with you. And I was a weapons instructor and lots more. But now I'm not sure what the future is going to hold, right? Because maybe you've been there, if you're listening and you're a veteran, or you're maybe getting out of the military, or maybe you're just interested in the military. At this time, I'm pretty much conditioned to the military. I've been in for nearly 8 years, and I'm scared. I've got no idea what's going to happen, other than I had a go at plumbing on my pre-release course, plumbing in London, Bermondsey, and I didn't like that because I wasn't fast enough. I was a good plumber because the army had trained me well, but because we didn't do that much plumbing in the army, apart from tours abroad every now and again, I hadn't been doing it daily. So when you put me against some really practice plumbers, they could do first and second fixes while I was still messing around with putting a sink on the wall or the equivalent, right? So I wasn't sure what to do. And I'd seen this job as a financial advisor advertised. So I went for the interview. And guess what? I got it. So I started as a financial advisor in 3 days, 1988, just after the financial crash of 87. Not a great time. So I'm frightened. I know nothing about money. I can just about write a check. And it reminds me of when I was a young schoolboy. When I got home, if my dad was home, it meant that he brought because he was a shop steward, right? A shop steward. And if he was home before I got home from school, it meant he had brought the workforce out on strike. Because I remember Fiddler's Ferry, which is a power station it was 8 towers, now there's 4 towers, and they're demolishing it over the rest of this year. And I knew there was something wrong. And he told me only recently that a few times people were killed because the health and safety, as I go back to before, the health and safety wasn't what it is now. And at one time, and this must have really affected him because he was ex-military as well, must have really affected him because it was a young Irish lad who came across from Ireland and said he was a scaffolder, a well-practiced scaffolder. And there was no checks or documentations back in the 60s and 70s. And he started, and they said, right, on the Friday, he said, on Monday, we want you to go and carry on taking down some scaffolding, and the experienced scaffolders have already been working on that. So right enough, Monday morning he goes up. The next thing, there was a scream, and he fell hundreds of foot and fell not far away from where my dad was working. What had happened was he actually wasn't a scaffolder. He didn't know how to do scaffolding, and the scaffolders who'd been working on it on Friday were seasoned professionals, and they had got to a certain stage on the scaffolding and then left it. Because he didn't know what he was doing, he didn't notice that some of the scaffolding boards were loose and not fixed like they should be. And when he stood on one, it moved. So my dad was at home at school when I came home from school. And, what I learned from that is that if you're not sure what you're doing, ask. How many times have you done something where you're not really sure what you've been doing and you've gone ahead anyway, and then it's not turned out so great? Or maybe you have known what you were doing, but you weren't that practiced at it. So if you ask next time you come in a situation like that, then just think how much easier it could be. So coming back to me, anyway, standing outside the gates, and I'm starting work as a financial advisor or the trainee financial advisor on the Monday. And I was unsure of where my income was coming from while I was training. The fact is, though, at least I had some jobs, right? In fact, I had 4, right? I'd already started lining up stuff before I left the military. So I didn't just decide to leave the military and then get out and then think, what am I doing now? The financial advisor was the profession I wanted to follow. The fact is that I knew that I had to have some money coming in because I bought a house just before I left. And looking with hindsight, I should have done that quite a few years before I left. But I didn't, and I'm starting, and I was supposed to buy it with a friend of mine, or a so-called friend. Actually, he pulled out just as we exchanged contracts. So I had to sell my car, buy it myself. And guess what? He said, no worries, Joe, I'll move in with you and I'll pay rent. He did move in with me. He didn't pay me any rent. And he moved his girlfriend in, and then they had a baby together, right? And then guess what? I got a bit fed up with that. So that didn't last for long. With my 4 jobs, DJing, right? How I got the DJ job was that when we were in the corporal's mess, the regimental sergeant major said, "Oh, corporal's mess DJ is leaving. Who wants to be the DJ?" And my mate helpfully threw my arm up and said, as if I'd volunteered. And the RSM said, "Well done, Corporal O'Connor, you're going to be the mess DJ." Which, looking back with hindsight, it's absolutely brilliant, because now I'm DJing a pub 7 nights a week. And when I finish there on a Friday and Saturday, I do either door work or I'm selling roses in the nightclub. And during the daytime, 2 times a week, during Saturday and Sunday, I'm delivering flowers in a van for Interflora. So the thing is, how many times have you thought, "Oh, how am I going to make ends meet? What can I do?" Well, you can take a leaf out of my book or the book that other people do and do a few more jobs. So you can do, hey, and this is only a suggestion, so don't shoot the messenger, but you could even get a bucket and a sponge and some car wash and then go washing cars, do anything to really get you where you want to be. And guess what? Something else happened which wasn't that great. Because in 1992, 91, 92, 93, the economy hit rock bottom, and interest rates, mortgage interest rates, the base rate went up to 17. Well, the base rate 16%. My building society, called the Woolwich, was charging me just over 17%. No, not a credit card. This was for a mortgage. So things were tough, and the bank manager, all the good bank managers were retired early. And because a lot of the banks, they've been making loans to Africa and other nations around that area, and they were being defaulted. The loans were being defaulted on, which meant that the banks were in trouble yet again. In fact, that was the first big one, and they do it every now and again, as you know, like times like now, 2007, 2008, 2001. It's an ongoing theme with them. Anyway, don't get me on that. This bank manager was brought in as a troubleshooter. I had a loan of £4,000 for my car, and I had an overdraft which was massive back then. It was £1,271. And the bank manager brought me in. They sent me a letter saying, "You need to come and see the bank manager." So I went in to see the bank manager, Mr. Amy. I'll always remember. Mr. Amy was the good guy, actually. And then there was another guy who I won't name. And he said to me, "Mr. O'Connor, I'd like to remind you, you bank with us, we don't bank with you." And right, get this, I was finding it difficult to put food on my table. I was working all the hours God sends. I had 4 jobs, and then I was trained as a financial advisor, not making any money there, and working all of the hours I could. And just at the right time, his phone rang, because I'm not sure what I was going to do. I knew that I wasn't very happy with his comment, though. And then I thought, right, I've got to start to work smarter here instead of harder. And I've got to train my body. I've got to get fit again, because I hadn't been doing the training. And I've got to make sure that I have some me time, some leisure. So I worked smarter instead of harder. I trained and played harder, and I passed all of my financial advisor exams and qualified as an independent financial advisor. And in 1993, I was one of the first to take the financial planner certificate in the UK. So things were on the up, and I met my first wife. And we saw an opportunity just outside Rochester in Kent, a workingmen's club, like a cooperative club, that had gone bust, and it had gone into liquidation, and we had the opportunity to buy it. We were up against quite a few people, and the mother and father-in-law provided a deposit. I put together a business plan. This was my first time, not long after leaving the army, and I thought, right, I've got to get really smart. And I timed it, so I was bidding against other people, publicans who've been in the game for quite a while, And I thought, how can I just get one over on them? And I knew that they were getting pub finance. They were getting finance from breweries, right? And I thought, right, okay, my strategy is I'll make my bid. So I'll make the first bid and then it's closed bid. And what I'll do is I'll wait until the last minute and put my final bid in. They won't have time to increase their bid because they'd have to go back to the brewery. And this is about how you negotiate in business and how you get the upper hand and all the secrets that I've discovered over my 36, 37, nearly 40 years in business. In fact, probably more because I was doing some moonlighting while I was in the military. And it's how you do things and create your strategies. And do you know, I was driving along the M2 just by Farthing Corner, which is the services, and my car broke down. And guess what? I did have a mobile phone, but that wasn't working properly. It used to have the size of car suitcases. So I had to run down to the Farthing Corner about a mile and a half. And I used one of those public phones. And I phoned my solicitor, says, right, here's the bid, put it in now. And I had 2 minutes left. He put the bid in, and then I had to wait on tender hooks. Did I get it? Did I not? And we got it. We were successful. That meant, hey, that's only the first part. That's the first part of the relief. Then there was all the grafting to make sure we got breweries in and redecorated it. And we spent lots and lots of time and turned it into a nightclub and a bar, right? And it was fantastic. We had food as well, steak and chips, pub food, and the mother and father-in-law looked after the running of the pub and the food, and I looked after the finances and the DJ and entertainment and the security. We had some interesting times as well, which is a whole new story, and I'll be talking about that in my book. So at this time, right, I'm remembering, right, because this is 1993, 94, and I'm remembering back to 1988 when I was stood outside the gates of the military, and I started to long for a challenge again. I'd been psychologically challenged, right? Learning about how to become a financial advisor. Now I'd reached that stage and I was doing continuous professional development. That's like sort of continuous learning, making sure you keep up to date with regulations and tax and changes in the way things work and inheritance tax, estate planning, wills, all that sort of stuff. But I'm not being challenged physically. And I thought, right, what can I do? I fancy going back in, but I don't fancy going back in 24/7, 365 days a year. So I found out about the Territorial Army, which is a part-time army, and it were one night a week and then weekends. I thought, right, I'll have a go at that. And just by coincidence, because I'm still in Kent and I'm not far from where I finished, because I'm in the Isle of Grain, which is just outside Rochester. And I found out there's a Corps of Royal Engineers unit in Rochester. So I went down there, I tipped up, and on a Tuesday night, and had an interview. And it was with a real stern Scottish officer, and he's a PSAO, Permanent Staff Administration officer. And he interviewed me. He says, right, O'Connor, he says, you're ex-regular, aren't you? I said, yes, sir. He said, right, you're in. So no training. I didn't have to do any basic training. Just went in, and forgive my lack of Scottish accent there. That was a terrible attempt at it. But he was a lovely fella, grey hair. He'd been through the ranks. He'd been an RSM, and then he got his captain, his commission, and he was working for the Territorial Army. So I fast-tracked straight in, and within about 4 years, I'd been promoted to sergeant. And oh, by the way, he said, as I'm leaving out, he says, oh, O'Connor, he says, this is a bomb disposal outfit. Right, so bomb disposal, right? And I thought, bomb disposal. I said, yeah, okay, sir, so long as I read the pamphlets, I reckon I'll be all right. I've just got to make sure that I do the study. Now, back in the days when I was 14 and I missed a year of school because of that incident, people call them accidents, but they're not accidents because everything I did leading up to that incident was planned. So it wasn't an accident. When I got hit by a car, it wasn't an accident because I stepped out onto the road in front of the car, right? Does that make sense? In fact, it wasn't as easy as that, but I mean, I got myself into a place where the car hit me, right? So there's no accidents in life. Everything are incidents, because there's certain things that need to happen to get you to where you are, to be in a place, either to achieve success and a reward, or to receive failure and the opposite of a reward, right? And by the way, you've not failed, right, until you give up. Failure is okay. It's a great lesson. Like I always say, I was chatting to a friend, and I remember there's either winning or learning, not losing. There's no losing. So long as you learn, that's a great place to be. So coming back to the bomb disposal unit, we're there, and I'm feeling now I can really move ahead. I can be challenged psychologically with the nightclub, running a nightclub, my financial advisor clients, and I can also be challenged physically with the bomb disposal, and that's still intellectual actually, because you need to learn how to dispose of unexploded ordnance. And then we sold the club, and I moved my business from Kent up to Widnes in the northwest. So prodigal son returns home, and Widnes isn't exactly the metropolis of finance, but it's a great place to be. I love the northwest. Widnes is in between Liverpool and Manchester, by the way. And I was still doing bomb disposal at weekends, and my wife had stayed down there. We had a son now. Comes 1999, he's 4, and she's pregnant with our second son. And I decided I wanted to go on a final mission. The only regiment that I would go to, apart from the engineers. So I went for an interview again, and this time I was in the Territorial Army, so they didn't need to ask me. They could look at my records to see that I was in. The thing is that this time I was 37, and the sergeant said, "You're a bit old for us, fella." He said, "We're not sure." And if you remember, I'm a physical training instructor. I've been training 7 nights a week, and I said, "Just give me a go." So pre-selection was 67 of us turned up. We got on a truck and we went to Winter Hill, which is to the east of the M6 motorway, and there's a big beacon on top, which is for mobile telephones and signals and all sorts of satellite stuff. And the part just at the bottom said, "Right, off you go." And there's directive staff along the way, and they'll show you where to go. So we kept going up the hill, running, and there were 67 of us, right? And I'm the only one over 30. There's one other person over 30, and he's 33. So 4 years my junior. And we're running, and they just keep pointing, "Keep going, fellas, keep going." And down the other side, 4 miles, got to the other side, said, "Wow, this is great." And the directive staff at the bottom said, just pointed back up to where I'd just come from. So yeah, you got it. That's a run back 8 miles in total, and I was flying. Right, it is a bit of a downer when you've just done 4 miles. You think you've got to the end, and then you're just about to let off steam, and then he said, "No, go back," because that is the test, right? That's the test. How many times have you been pushed to a point where you think, right, and then you think, "I haven't got much more, and you think you're finished, and then you realize you've got more to do? What do? Do you just give in, or just say, "No, come on, let's dig down, let's get this"? So I dug down, back to the truck, ran across the finish line. I thought, yes, and I came third out of 67 blokes, and all of them were in the 20s, except for the other guy who was 33. So I was pretty chuffed. And the sergeant said, "Yeah, okay then, yeah, you've proved yourself. You've got the right to come on selection." So that was February, March 1999. Come October 1999, we've been through some stuff. right? And there were 8 of us left from the 67 initial intake. So it had been pretty tough, as you can imagine, by the attrition of numbers. And how many times have you been doing something and you see people who started off with you and they just don't stick at it. They just decide to give up. And guess what? There have been many times during this podcast as well that I felt like flipping out, where am I getting my next guest from? And it's just about pushing that little bit further. And until you become a master at what you do. So October, 8 of us left, and the weather hadn't been that great during the daytime. And we just about finished our food cooking in the forest, not in a 5-star restaurant or a 5-star canteen or cookhouse. This was just out in a nice open wilderness. So come on, fellas, out you come. And it was our directive staff, and they were really stern, chiseled jaw, and really hard-looking men. We got on parade, and then we're off. And at first, the weather, although it was raining, sleet, and rain heavily, there was no real wind until we got to the top of the mountain ridge and going along the ridge, and we were being blown around everywhere. And on this occasion, a 70-pound backpack, Bergen, as we call it, just became light, then it's heavy, then it's light, then it's heavy, then it's light, then it's heavy. I'm thinking, what happened there? That hurt. And then I don't remember anything. And what seems like 5 minutes, as I'm opening my eyes, that was Saturday night, by the way, I'm opening my eyes, and I smell that pungent smell of antiseptic again and see white all around me. And this time, a smart-looking chap in a pinstripe suit standing over me. He said, "Mr. O'Connor." And I thought, not again. "Mr. O'Connor, you were out with the SAS on selection. The weather was horrendous. You shouldn't have been there." And I thought, no shit, Sherlock. And yes, Mr. O'Connor, you were out. The weather was horrendous. A gust of wind lifted you off your feet. It threw you 197 foot down the side of the mountain in a ravine. You've broken your neck. C5 is shattered. C6 is broken. Wow. So that's why I can't move. What am I going to do? So, well, what's going to happen now, Doc? Well, Mr. O'Connor, we need to operate. Well, what happens if you don't operate, Doc? So, well, you'll be paralyzed for the rest of your life. I thought, wow. Well, there's not much of a choice there, is it? Please operate. And then I started thinking about my wife who's back home. I've been kicking the ball in the garden with my 4-year-old son. She's pregnant with our second son. I'm supposed to be in work today. It's a Monday, right? It's a Monday. I'm supposed to be in work, closing some deals. I've got financial deals to do, some investments, clients who've got a mortgage to complete, all sorts of stuff. And I'm stuck in bed, paralyzed. And I gotta admit, I'm not feeling that great. And as the doctor's walking off, I said, "Oh, Doc, by the way," and I don't know where this came from. I said, "Doc, by the way," I said, "I've got a marathon to run in New York on Sunday for charity. Can you patch me up?" And I don't know how he didn't laugh. He came back to me and said, "Mr. O'Connor," peering over his clipboard, "Mr. O'Connor, looking at your records, I know the training you've done. And maybe a few days ago, you were capable of doing that marathon. Now, you won't be running that marathon on Sunday. In fact, you'll be fortunate if you can do any sort of physical training at all in the future." And that's when it hit me. Wow, what am I going to do? And fast forward, because this podcast, I did say that jokingly it was going to last 5 hours. I could quite easily do that. I'm not going to, because you know the score. My podcasts are shorter than that, in bite-sized chunks. What I can say is, fast forward a few years, and I went through a divorce, and that was a mutual divorce. It wasn't that great at the time. My wife had my second son, didn't really get to spend that much time with them. I moved back in with my parents. Deep joy. I don't know whether you've ever done that. It's an interesting experience, I can say. Hats off to my mum and dad, though, being able to put up with me when I was recovering from paralysis and probably a little bit grumpy at times, maybe. Yeah, wanting to get back into business. Fortunately, as a financial advisor, I don't have to lift any heavy weights. The heaviest weight I lift, I suppose, is a pen or a computer, a laptop. We didn't have a smart iPads that back then, or did we? Did we just no? The iPhone wasn't created until some time later. I did have a mobile phone though, a Nokia, which was great. I felt so proud of that. It was better than the car phone one in 1989 that I had, that if you left it on in the car, it drained your battery down because it was massive. It was like a suitcase. Anyway, come back to divorce, moved back in with my parents. Things weren't looking good, nearly went bust. Quite literally lost everything, went through the divorce. One thing I couldn't lose, though, that they couldn't take away from me ever, was my self-respect and determination to just do my best all the time and give it my best shot. And what happened in 2003, around about that time, was Iraq 2, the conflict. And there were guys, and then Afghanistan in 2008, 9. And what was happening then is media was reporting about deaths. What they weren't doing was reporting so much on the injuries for some time, until some time later. And I knew that when there was a death from an IED, improvised explosive device, with my bomb disposal EOD training, then I knew that there were people being injured as well, because the sad thing about IEDs is they're designed to create havoc and maim individuals rather than kill them. So when your muckers come in to get you out and rescue you, the enemy have got a chance to get even more people. So I was thinking, what can I do to help? And that was when the idea of the Transformation for Veterans charity came up. I wanted to make a difference, and we agreed with my wife. I was looking out the kitchen window, I think, listening to the news, and I thought, what can we do? We got it, so we established this charity. And I wanted to discover how the mind works, right? And I was still working with my financial clients. And looking back, I've been an instructor and a coach for all of my life. You know, physical training instructor, unarmed combat instructor, windsurfing instructor. I'd also instructed people on field engineering, help people out, and trained all my time. And then in bomb disposal, I've been training the younger guys, weapons instructor, range master instructor. And it just seemed natural for me to become an accredited master coach, trainer in neuro-linguistic program, which is an interesting thing about how to use language properly, positively rather than negatively, and learned about hypnosis, became a trainer in hypnosis and timeline therapy, which is a whole other ball game, which is particularly effective to help with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I did this because my wife and I wanted to help veterans, because, by the way, I was fortunate enough to meet my second wife, and we're still happily together. And my first wife has met the partner of her dreams, who's now a husband, and they get on great as well, which I'm really chuffed with, because I think that we should all just get on with people. And coming back to being able to carry on as a financial advisor, because there was no heavy lifting, so to speak, I was working with a client for the financial review, a business client, and interestingly, he said, Joe, can you help me? I said, well, what do you mean help you? I'm doing a financial review for you. I do help you. He says, yeah, I know that you've been doing that for years, 10, 15 years. Oh, no, in fact, it might have been even longer than that. He said, and I'm really happy with your service. He said, the fact is, I'm having some challenges in business. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, psychologically challenges. I'm having problems with my team. I'm having problems with myself because I'm doubting myself. I've got problems with co-directors. Can you help me? And I said, well, why don't you get yourself a business coach or a life coach or something like that? He said, well, I've had a go with them. I've tried them. And he said, they don't really work for me. I said, well, I work with veterans. I've gathered my skills to work with veterans and to be able to help veterans. He said, well, can you not make an exception? I said, well, I haven't got time really because I do the financial review with my other clients. He said, well, I'll pay you. And I thought, right, okay, so let's revisit this. And what I did is I put together a mastermind program and a coaching program, executive coaching program, using all the skills, knowledge, and wisdom that I gained over the years from business, my journey as a trainer in NLP, and all that sort of stuff, and the accredited master coach. And I developed this passion for service, and I believe with focused leadership, because guess what leadership is, right? A good leader is someone who can get someone to do something that they would not have done had they not been there. I'll say that again. A great leader is a person who can get somebody else to do something they would not have done had they not been there. And that's what I love doing, I love the strategies that I've discovered and learned and mastered to be able to help guys get from where they are now, which might be totally disenchanted with the world, maybe not firing on all cylinders, maybe not making the profit or target that they need and are capable of, to where they want to be, which is totally firing on all cylinders, great in the relationships, got a fantastic business or a fantastic job, getting paid what they deserve or even more than they deserve, and just feeling happy with who they are, the people they hang around with, and what they are, what they're doing in life. Because isn't that great? And my mission, as I've said already, is to help 1 million entrepreneurial business owners and veterans achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. And what I've done, right, to do this, right, I really thought about what I needed to do. And I looked at what other people were doing, because guess what? I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I want to make my wheel better, faster, more streamlined than anyone else's wheel. And then I put the wheels on a vehicle, and that vehicle is faster, better, more streamlined than anything else anyone's got, or at least as good as. And I believe that what I put together is just spectacular. Well, guess what? I'm told it's spectacular. So it doesn't matter what I think, does it, so much? Because I would say that, wouldn't I? But the people have told me that it's great. In fact, I've written the Pathfinder Ultimate Success System, which is a program that helps you get where you want to be. And guess what? If it doesn't work after 12 months, you get a full refund. No quibbles. I give you a full refund, because I know that this has got all my years in business and military and put together. It's the Pathfinder. It's, if you're watching this on video, it's behind me. And it's absolutely, I'm told, fabulous. And I was told that I should price it way above it, thousands of pounds, and I didn't want to do that. So I've made sure that it's affordable for people. Just really, you've got to have a look and visit. So what I did is I put together this useful membership site, which is full of resources that are fantastic. They've got hundreds of hours of content, including recordings of my Veterans for Success podcast, the Standing on the Shoulder of Giants showcase event, which was held in lockdown. And I actually hired a venue, and we filmed it on stage with guests coming when we were allowed to mix in small numbers. And we filmed it and put it out over Zoom. And now all of that recording is there. And it was a payable event, right? And you get access to this as well. You get the business cheat sheets that I've created, and much, much more. You get access to the Transformer Business Network, where you can come along as my guest up to 2 times at my expense. And all this for just £12 per month. That's less than 40 pence per day, or 2 coffees a month. See, because I really want to, because with my mission to help 1 million, and guess what, when we get to 1 million, which will be pretty shortly, actually, I want to upscale that and get another million, then 10 million, and just keep going, because I believe that together we can achieve more. Together, everyone's attitude matters as well. So you can learn about the Ultimate Success System, the Pathfinder. You can learn about the Transformer Business Network. There's lots of other stuff on there. And you can also upgrade to get your accountability group, right? When you're using the Pathfinder Ultimate Success System, you get the opportunity to join an accountability group that will help you achieve your dreams, goals, and aspirations much, much quicker. And the Transformer Business Network is designed to widen your network of entrepreneurs, so you can get even better business results, or get better personal results as well. And this content is regularly added to, and all this for just £12 per month. So joeteams.com is the website. It's joeteams.com, JOETEAMS.com. That's JOETEAMS.com, joeteams.com. And remember, to successful become, visit joeteams.com. To successful become, visit joeteams.com, and visit it now to find out more. Thank you for joining me today. You've been absolutely brilliant. And until the next time we meet, keep smiling and be brilliant. Thank you.